Hello, everyone, and welcome to Programming Foundations 2. If this is your first time in your class, congratulations on just finishing the associates portion of the degree. We're going to be, this will be your first class for the actual bachelor portion. So it will expect a little bit more in the topics of research and practical application, showing that you understand the topics a bit better. With that out of the way, let's take a look at how the class is laid out in FSO. The very first thing we have listed in the assignments is this course materials and policies. So this document, or well, this assignment is just a reference for linking to things that are most commonly used throughout the class. A couple of ones that I want to bring to your attention is downloading the Epic Games Launcher. So please download that if you have not already. As far as once you have that downloaded, you're going to have to download the actual Unreal Engine. If you already had Epic Games Launcher on your computer and just need to download the engine, once you open it up, the launcher, you can go to Unreal Engine, and under Library, you can press the plus to add a different version. The version that we'll be using for this month will be 4.25.0. So make sure that you have, if you have 4.243, that's perfectly fine as well, but try to make sure that for ease of use that you have 4.25, otherwise some of the images may look out of date. So in here, we also have a link to the course materials. This is a Google Drive that actually links to all of the different assignments. They're all laid out into the different folders, along with a whole bunch of other useful documents. Blueprint glossary is just a bunch of new terms. You're going to have a crap ton of new terms thrown at you this month because things are called differently than they were in Unity. So what we've done is created this blueprint glossary to try and connect things to make connect their equivalent of what they are in Unity. Class hierarchy just shows how the classes are laid out. We'll talk about that more as the month goes on. Some common problems, just a simple FAQ document that you may want to reference if you do run into some issues, whether it's installing Unreal, getting it loaded, experiencing some crashes, things like that. Debugging basics, we'll be talking about that next lecture a bit more about actually debugging. The Discord connection, live sessions, which apparently you guys found since you're already in the live session right now, and PGF2 assets along with PGF2 assets door. These are going to be the assets that we're going to use to create our projects in Unreal. Back out to the assignment. This basically just describes all the different stuff in there. There's the policy folder, goes over submission and late policy, contact policy, academic honesty. Support, we have the Discord channel, as well as, even though the times are only listed from Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 1:30 to 4:30, we do monitor that outside of those times whenever we have some free time. So please just post in there and we'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Quick thing about writing technical questions. So since this is a programming class, you will actually have to describe the kind of problem you're having, not just saying, oh, this isn't working or something like that. That doesn't really help us help you. I mean, because then we just have to follow up. Well, what is it doing? What isn't it doing? What are you expecting it to do? And stuff like that. So be sure you actually be as specific as possible when you are asking questions. And just a reminder about the Copilot Tutoring Center. They are still running and have tutors and things available along with the open hours and stuff. One other thing I skimmed past is the live sessions, which you found recorded lectures. So the recorded lectures is a playlist that has pre-recorded stuff for the different assignments, along with the sessions from last month from all the live sessions. As soon as this session is over, I'm going to be uploading this recording straight to the same playlist. and it'll just be populated at the bottom with today's date. So course and materials is all done. Then we get into the intro assignments. So you should be pretty familiar with the basic intro stuff that you have for each class. The professionalism, just go in and mark that complete. That lets us know that you plan to act professionally throughout the course. The academic honesty is actually a test that goes over 15 different scenarios, asking you, would this be considered cheating, or what the person should do in those different situations. Course policies is also a test, just making sure that you have read through the actual submission policy, the contact policy, and understand the late penalties and things. And lastly, there's a quick discussion about following instructions. So this is very important as you get further in your education, since there will be less direct guidance of how to do things. And if you are just going step by step through the instructions, you're going to have a bad time. You typically want to read a few instructions ahead to know what the expected outcome is and understand how things are why things are being set up in the way they are. Out of the intro assignments, we have our main assignments listed. So the online section, let me actually open, and I can't open as a different window. Fantastic. For those of you that are in an online section, we'll have this, come on, set up a bit differently. There will be just one called assignments that combines the research tasks along with the assignments. The one on campus, because ILAs were normally counted for attendance when you are on campus, they are listed as a separate item. They are the same across the two different sections, but just wanted to remind you guys of the campus. Even though these ILAs have the due date set, you will not be penalized for any attendance if you do not complete the ILAs. You may get professionalism taken away just for not completing an assignment, but the most they require is just taking a screenshot of a specific item in one of the example projects, making sure that you did get directed towards something to research. For the assignments, we have 4 of them. This first one, you may notice, is only a 2% weight. This first one is basically walked through for you. It's a direct walkthrough where it's just setting up the project, and we'll be doing part of that at the end of this lecture, and I'll point you out of where to go for the end portion. But it's a very small one, making sure that you know how to turn in, know how to actually work in Unreal, do have it installed, and things like that. Assignment 2 is your first one that'll be introducing a concept of lab tasks. So there is a guided portion walking you through several different topics, and then there's the lab portion, which actually has you implement things similar to the lab tasks we've done, but using some research material or in a slightly different way. For example, we create a pickup that if you hit it, you'll take some damage. One of the lab tasks is creating a pickup that when you run over it, gives you health instead of takes health away. Assignment 3 and 4 are following the same suit with assignment 2 of there'll be a portion of guidance and then portion of the actual application and showing that you understand the topics instructed. And finally, at the end of the course, we have finals. There are 4 finals, 18 questions each. And we may notice that this class is an immediate reschedule class. So these due dates, the very last thing that will be due is on the 25th. And that's these 2 last tests. Our last assignment of the portion that you'll be building a project with is going to be due that 24th. So we have to have everything turned in by the 24th. The very last I can accept any submissions is the 25th, because I have to have pass or fail grades done by the 26th. So just a heads up there. And back into our ILAs, as I mentioned, these are just called the research assignments inside the online section. They'll have you create example projects and look through specific things. This one wants you to take a picture of the animation blueprint. So that'll make more sense once you work a little bit with Unreal and work through that very first assignment and things like that. They'll actually have you create some example projects for your reference. That's about it for the course layout. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to getting started with Unreal? Alrighty. So getting started with Unreal. Assignment 1 is going to be your first assignment with it. In here, we have different assignment steps. There's written materials associated with it. There's the lectures associated with it, as well as the rubric. We can take a quick look at all that right now before we get into it. And let me close out of that. So assignment 1, it's going to be 4 total parts. We're going to do project setup, and we'll actually walk through that together, just making sure that you can import the assignment stuff. And there's character setup, player input, and these documents are kind of a step-by-step guide. Open the launcher, get all that. We're going to change the material, lay out our folders, things like that. So there will be all those built in. And as far as the recorded lectures, we already saw this playlist linked once before. This lecture will actually be covering the intro as well as the first project setup. And assignment 1, full-on walkthrough. The rest of the portions, that part 2, 3, and 4 will be walked through in this one if you want to watch the video guide or just use the document portion before. So actually getting into assignment 1, let's talk about project setup. So let's say you actually have the assignment and everything all downloaded, or Unreal all downloaded. You're going to want to launch a new project. So we can launch the engine and wait for a loading screen. And it'll actually launch an instance of the engine. You have to then choose which project you want to open up or create a new project, things like that. So this is the project browser will open up when you first launch an engine. Since we don't have any projects created yet, this will be our very first project that we'll be using. Pretend that is all blank, ignore that. So we'll be creating a new game. We aren't in film, we aren't in architecture or automotive, we are making games here. So game, then it asks you, what do you want to start out with? We are going to start out with a blank template. We're going to be building everything from the ground up so you have a better understanding of how these templates got their stuff and their basic movement and things while working. So we'll be doing blank template. Next, and you're presented with some options. Do you want to start a blueprint C++? We definitely want to do blueprint. We will not be covering C++ in this project or in this class because it's a little bit beyond just what 1 month can actually teach you. Desktop or console, maximum quality, and starter content. We want no starter content. We're going to be importing the PGF2 assets to be used instead of the Unreal assets. And Ethan had a question about the ILAs are not for online students. Correct. You guys have those in the form of, let me actually open that up, of research assignments alongside the main assignments. So you have something called Research 1. that has 3 different sections in it. Those correspond to those first 3 ILAs from the campus side. Yep. So back to Unreal. We have our project browser. We're creating a new project. And oh, I thought I closed Discord. Quit out of that real quick, just so nothing pops up. And we were talking about starter content. We want no starter content that closed box, more closed. I don't know why they don't have one just fully closed, but no starter content. We'll be using our own stuff. And we definitely want ray tracing disabled. While ray tracing can look cool, it just adds a lot of extra things to the project that while you're first learning and just using for some simple projects to get familiar with the system are completely unnecessary. As far as where we want to store this folder, we want to change it from the default. By default, it'll try and store it in your users folder. That's typically a bad idea. You generally want to browse out to your C drive and create a new folder right on your C drive to store projects in. I have a few different folders already here created, but we can just right click and create a new folder in here. Come on. Why is it not letting me? Oh, doy. New folder. Got used to Perforce's interface. New folder, and we'll call this UE for _25, just for showing the project or the Unreal Engine version name in there too. We can select that folder. We got to give our project a name. We got to give our project a name that we'll remember. We'll actually be building off of this project for each of the assignments. And you'll want to do something like your last name, first name, or even just PGF2. I'm going to call mine lectures _ and this is this June, so we'll say 2020-06, representing the year and month. We'll create that, and we get to watch another loading screen. So Unreal likes their loading screens. Good news is they do not take nearly as long to start up past the initial load. So the very first time you open a project, it may take a significant amount of time, but each time after that becomes subsequently quicker. So we have a couple of windows here that I want to point out to familiarize yourself with. Obviously in the main screen right here, we have what is called a viewport. That's very similar to the scene view in Unity. And we can right click and turn our mouse to actually rotate our camera around, and WASD to move forward, back, and even Q to go down, E to go up. So we can fly through the scene. If we actually select an object, for example, this floor that it gave us, we'll see our world outliner has that floor selected. Our world outliner is just like our hierarchy window. This is where all the objects from the current level are listed. Our current level, by the way, is named Untitled. Just like Unity starts you out with a sample scene, they start you out with a basic template just to get started. Has a few different things in it, some fog, the floor, light, what is called a player start, that's where your player will actually spawn in, a sky sphere, so that you get the clouds and stuff like that, a sky light to help represent some atmospheric stuff, and a sphere reflection capture, so that everything can look shiny if it wants to. So a couple more things than just the light and camera that you're given from Unity. Over on this left side, if you're in 4.25, this will be called Place Actors. And this used to be called the Modes panel. where they've now separated modes out over here. So just a heads up, if you are working on an older version of the engine, this modes is all right here as well. Down at the bottom, oh, actually, before I do that, let's click on the floor again. We have our floor selected. And so if this is the hierarchy, we have our inspector is called details. Details is where it's going to list the different components. We can change the different properties of it, what material that one is using, stuff like that. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves and continue just checking things out, very first thing I want to do is make sure that I have this scene saved somewhere and we're not just using that sample scene they're giving us. Down here in your content browser, just like your project browser or assets browser from Unity, underneath this add new button, we can click this to actually show our different folders. And engine content and stuff will not show by default, so let me get rid of those real quick. So it should just show content with nothing in it. Because we chose a blank project, that's exactly what we were looking for. We need to actually save this untitled level into a folder. And to keep things going off the start with a little bit of organization, we're going to create a levels folder. So we can right click this content folder, and up at the very top is new folder. Click that, and we're just going to call this levels. So we have our levels folder, but nothing inside of it. If we want to save this level, we can go to File and Save Current As. I want to save this level as something different. I don't want it to have that name untitled forever. We then want to make sure that we are in our levels folder, where we want to save it, and we can give this level a name. Since this is our first level, we'll just call this level 1. And boom, we've got our level and it's saved. Next thing we want to do is import our PGF2 assets. So if we go ahead and try and import those, that was from our preview, course materials policies, course materials, PGF2 assets.zip. I'm going to go ahead and download that. And we just want to open the zip. We don't want to extract it anywhere. We can just double click it to open it. And right in that PGF2 assets zip, there's a PGF2 assets folder. We could explore a bit more right inside there. There's some more folders for the different assets. Let's go back out to the zip. So we just have this folder selected. If I want to navigate to where this is stored on our computer, we can go ahead and right click our content folder and show in Explorer, just like the Explorer project browser from Unity. We can open an Explorer window right up to where this project is stored. I'm going to minimize Unreal. We see we have our contents folder open. I'm going to drag and drop from the zip over to the content. We should see that it's going to copy that stuff from the zip. And we've dropped our PGF2 assets folder right in content. If we pop back over to Unreal, we should see that it now shows all of that stuff in Unreal. We should be able to actually look through this. Sorry, one second. And we should be able to see the different kinds of things we have. We have materials, that's just like Unity materials, just same concept there. We have some animations to look through. We have some animated meshes, 2 of them, a mannequin and a gun, as well as some static meshes, a couple of things to actually get some of the lab tasks done, some different textures included, as well as visual effects. We have a couple of particle systems all set up. Very first thing we're going to do is change the material that this is using, because I don't want it to look like a standard untitled level from Unreal. So we can do this a couple of ways. We can select this asset and change its property that it has for materials. We can look for a material we've called m_floor. And we see it applies that floor texture. Now, it may take a moment to actually show up in the scene or in the viewport while it's compiling some shaders. So it only has to compile those shaders if the material itself hasn't been compiled for a while. So we've got that material applied. Let's also change some properties about this floor. It's actually a very tiny floor. If we swap over to the different widgets up here, we can change by using either the keywords. Pressing W will go for a transform widget. E will go to rotate. R will actually be scale. I'm going to scale this up so we have some more space to work with. Now, one thing about that, now that we've changed the scale, we get this big red text saying lighting needs to be rebuilt. What that means is that any pre-baked shadows and stuff will not look correct. It is just previewing them until you rebuild the light maps for it. So in here, there's actually this build button. We could click the build button. It'll launch what is called Swarm, which is their light map builder. It'll actually export everything out and then re-import it once the building is all complete. We can go back to our level and we should see the proper lighting and no more warning or anything while we're in our level. So, got all that set up. The other things I want to set up are actually making sure that our levels folder is going to be inside a named folder. I kind of jumped ahead and forgot to create a named folder. So we're going to right click on content, create a new folder again, and this will be what we refer to as our named folder. This will be your last name followed by your first name. And we want all the content that we create from the ground up to be inside this folder. Well, our levels is currently not inside this folder. So let's actually save everything, and you'll notice that this is save current. This just saves the level. There's another button down here to save all, which will detect any other blueprints or assets that you've modified. I highly recommend using this one. It's very easy to just hit that one and have a bunch of different tabs open that you forgot to change. So let's, before I move that levels folder in, I want to show you guys something. So if we close out of this and we want to reopen that level, we'll wait a moment for the launcher to pop back up. We could launch the engine again, then open the project again. So we see our lectures project right here. We can just double click it to open it. And we see we are now in an untitled level. So every time we open it, it's currently giving us one of those blank levels. Our level's right here. We'd have to open that before we start working in it. This is one of the big reasons of why we changed the floor, so it's really easy to see, like, I'm not in my level. I shouldn't change things in here until I'm in my actual level. So to make this level open up by default, we can go up to the settings up here, and we can set specific project settings. So we'll open those project settings up. One thing I didn't mention because I haven't shown it yet is like if you do open in different windows, these tabs work just like browser tabs. So you can actually drag and drop and dock these different windows next to each other. I highly recommend keeping them all docked just next to your level tab. That makes it really easy to have to know which one you have open, because if you do end up having, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Come on. If we have like 3 open right here, but then pop over to view a document and want to view one of these, it has to select them out of order and things like that. It won't be very good. So being able to select those tabs and keep the tab on top as you wanted, just dock them for simplicity's sake. So project settings. Now there's a bunch of different settings that you can modify. Don't worry about that too much. We will guide you to exactly which settings you need to modify at a time if needed. One we're going to focus on right now is our project maps and modes tab. And in here, we can set an editor startup map. This is the map that gets loaded when the editor starts up. We want to change that from a default template to the level 1 we created. So now, with that set, there's no way to save these project settings. By default, it will automatically save as soon as the project settings are closed or the project closes out. So let's test this. We just set that to load up when the level starts. If we close out, and this time I'm going to show just a different way of opening it rather than using the Unreal Launcher and stuff. If we go up one folder from our content to the actual project folder, there is a .u project file associated with this. This is what is called the project folder. We can double click that to open that up. And we see it did load our level. Now, if we wanted to move this levels folder into our named folder, we go ahead and try that. It moved it, and it's now underneath our named folder for levels. If we test closing out and opening this again, we see it does not have our level loaded anymore. Reason for that is because when you move something in Unreal, it creates what is called a file redirector. And so typically you don't want to move things or rename things very often. You typically want to just go with what your first name was. But if you do move things, you're going to want to right click the content folder and fix up redirectors. Fix up redirectors will get rid of any redirections it had, as well as I want to check what map our level's trying to load. If we try and open this now, even with the fixed redirectors, let's see. I think the project settings doesn't take into account the redirector. So yes, so it's still not loading our level that we created. So our redirectors will be held in our config folder. There's 2 main folders holding everything for the project. It's content and config. These other 3 get created locally when you just have the project open for faster loading. So if we look at our config and our default, that's wrong, editor has nothing in it, default engine. So we see we do have 2 active game redirects. So old game name, change from a blank blueprint to the template, and then also where it's looking to load this level, it's looking straight in the game directory or the content directory in the levels folder, level 1. Well, if I look in our content folder, we no longer have that levels folder out here. So back in our levels, or back in our project, we need to make sure that we change that project setting because we moved that level. Our project setting, maps and modes, we see it can't even find the level that it was trying to. We need to reset that in here so that it's got that full path of game, Murphy, Justin, levels. So that's a big one, just making sure that that gets set up so that when we open your project, it opens to your level that you created. All right. One other thing I do want to point out is if we go ahead and press play right now, we'll see we can click to give mouse control. If we click and use WASDA, we can actually fly around and have this spectator camera. So it does give you a base pawn to actually control and move around for the level. We go into a lot more for the rest of this assignment to create a character that you can control, move around, and we wrap it up with some animations. On that note, that brings you up to just about the end of part 1. Not grading. So assignment 1. Part 1 was just all about that project setup, making sure that you did import the assets and have that level saved, your named folders set up, and then it gets into creating a blueprint and things like that for the next assignment or for the next part. So for this, you can either choose to follow along with all of the written instructions right here, or you can continue following along with the walkthrough right here, which leaves off, or which picks up right after the level had been created and can add the character and stuff like that. At the very end, you'll want to follow the submission document to figure out how to submit. There is also a recorded lecture right here, submission prep, and making sure to test it in another project. And wrapping this up, there is a docs done build, so you can see what the outcome is of the assignment. That's right here inside the assignment folder. We can download this, and this is an executable of just the assignment being complete. And you can test it side by side with your project. I need to actually extract this to a, let's just go to the desktop, that'll be easy. I say easy, but it's taking a long time. Oh crap, do I already have one? That's why it was taking so long. So in here, there's an executable that we can just run. It'll let you know, hey, it doesn't recognize to publish this app. I've published this app. I assure you it is not anything that will harm your computer. It is just a simple game. We can run anyway. And here's what we'll have by the end of assignment 1, which usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete for the average student after they've got Unreal all set up. So we've got one character placed in a level. Our character actually spawns in at that starting point. We have some collisions between the characters, and we can see I'm using WASDA to move around. So we have forward, back, left, right. At our mouse, we can look up, turn our character right or left for some third-person controls. We also detect if our character is going faster than a certain speed to tell it to switch the animation to running, or vice versa. Once it's stopped, switch it back to idle. And we built in an escape, so if you press escape, it stops playing. So that about wraps it up for any prep you have. As far as the rubric for assignment 1, we could take a look at that. Here's how the rubrics will be laid out. We'll talk a bit more about the assignment 2 rubric once we get into that later on this week. This one has only 3 categories. Just turning in, making sure that everything is running. The way this works is that you can get the superior category if everything's working as intended and you didn't do any of the bad stuff from unacceptable or satisfactory. So if they aren't next to each other, then and you sent them in 2 different zips, not quite sure why you do that, or the level doesn't load. For example, you moved it, but you didn't update the project settings to its new location, things like that would get you a satisfactory. As far as handling input, if most of the input settings are correct, but you forgot to say A will go negative right instead of positive right and stuff like that, then you get satisfactory. You completely forgot about any inputs from the settings, since there's so few, then it would be considered unacceptable. As far as the character movement, this is talking about the movement, making sure that it's working always going forward or relative to the character's facing direction, along with animations. So if the animations aren't switching, you'll just get satisfactory. If the movement isn't right and you press W to go forward and they just go completely ignoring your world direction and just go off to the right or something if you've rotated the camera, then that would be unacceptable. So other than that, that's about all I have for you today. Were there any questions about any of the topics that we talked about, getting the assets imported and the level actually saved, how Unreal's laid out, things like that?